Hi. Okay, this isn't weird at all. Okay, so as Afri said, my name is Bracha Barad. I am a feminist activist. I run an NGO in Israel that is called Kulan, which means together all of us. And I've been doing online and offline activism for the past 5 years. I'm also one of the administrators of the largest Facebook feminist community in Israel called Feminist Discourse, which has about 40,000 women all together talking and having debates about feminism for about 6 years or so. And I'm going to speak to you about I'm going to give you the Slutwalk as an example for an activist struggle that has succeeded. And I'm going to, thank you, Afri.
Sorry.
And I'm going to give you a few tools, a few explanations on what we did right and how you can do the same things with what you're trying to achieve. I'm going to speak about how you can use the social media to get people to join your movement. And I'm going to try and give you some tips to know how to get more people to join what you're trying to do and help you change the world, what you're trying to do. So let's get started. First of all, I'll give you a few words on the base that the Slutwalk is coming from. I'm sure you all know the feminist movement. It's been around for about over 100 years. It started out as women fighting for the right to vote and for other formal rights that women didn't have. And over a decade, over a century later, we have still women fighting for different rights, I think. We have most of the formal rights, but most of the feminists today would call themselves radical feminists. When radical doesn't mean extreme, it means that we're trying to change society from the root. We're trying to change the way people think of women, the concept of men and women and gender roles, and all those things. So that's where that's the field we're in. And the Slutwalk is actually an international movement. We didn't make it up. It started in Toronto in 2011 when an officer told women in a lecture that he was giving women and men. He told them if women want to stop being victimized, they have to stop dressing like sluts. And the women in Toronto got very upset and started a march against this saying, which was around two things. One thing is the connection that keep in mind that this is pre-Me Too movement era, and there was a lot less knowledge of and realization of what goes on with sexual violence, and a lot of people thought that what women wore or the way they behaved, and if they were sexual, is the reason that they're getting harassed or raped. And that's one thing that Slutwalk is actually going against. It's saying it doesn't matter who you are and how you behave. That's not the reason that you got hurt. If you got hurt, the problem is the person who hurt you and nothing that you did. And so we're trying to disconnect this concept that there is a connection between being a sexual woman and being hurt. And the other thing is victim blaming that we're going against. And there's two things are a lot of the same, but there are two aspects of the same idea, that when a woman gets hurt or something like that, she's going to usually doubt herself. She's going to think, why did I do this if I didn't do that? And a lot of the time she's going to hear it from her friends and from her family and from the media and from the judicial system. Why did you do this? If you wouldn't have done this, it might have not happened. So we're going against the concept of blaming the victim, because you wouldn't see it in any other crime. You're not going to see somebody going up to a person who got mugged on the street and say, why did you walk through that street? So we're trying to get people to understand that this is not acceptable. And so the Slutwalk, it started out in Toronto in 2011, and it spread to America, and from there to Europe and to Asia. You have Slutwalks today in many countries around the world. In some countries, it's actually with a different name. In India, for instance, they changed the name because it didn't suit their culture. So it changes throughout different cultures. But the point, the message that we're trying to convey all over the world is that women are not to blame for being hurt. Again, 2011, before Me Too, this was extremely radical. So as I said, I started out my activism about 5 years ago. I went to uni. I started a feminist group in Tel Aviv University. And at the same time, I joined the admin crew of Feminist Discourse, which back then it was, I think, 7,000 or 8,000 women. Today it's 40,000. And we started doing things, and I ran into the people who did the Slutwalk in Tel Aviv, and I said, oh, this is cool, I want to join. And we started joining the production crew. And what we did is we actually, every year that we've been producing it, we've been doubling it in size of people coming, in exposure that we get in social media and in mainstream media in Israel, and also the crew that were, in 2016, we were 6-7 women doing the production. In 2018, we already had about 100 women involved in this at some level. So we're exponentially enlarging it every year. And when I think of the future, I think of the Tel Aviv Slutwalk in a way that we think of the Tel Aviv Pride. I think if it has a lot of the same qualities, a lot of the same criticism, that it's extremely provocative, and why do you have to do it like that? And I think that if you ask me where I want to get, that's the place I think that women should be with the Slutwalk, in maybe a decade or so. So how did we do it? How did we take a feminist march that was a few hundred women and not very interesting or not getting a lot of attention? And how did we actually get it to grow each year and get more people to join the cause? So there was actually, I'm going to give you a few tips from what I learned. One of the things that we did, in martial arts, they have the concept of use your enemy's power against them. So that's one thing that we did all the time. When we had people criticizing us, or when we had people telling us, you're just ugly feminists that need to get laid, we took that and we used it to our advantage. We used it to show people why we need this walk, why they need to join us, why this cause is not just a bunch of feminists yelling and being upset. This is something that involves each and every woman. And so that's one thing that we did. The other thing that we did was, I call this field work, I guess. And I think field work in 2018, it means two aspects. One of them is online and one of them is offline. And if you know a little bit about social media, a lot of people are saying the word organic reach. And what that means is you can either give Facebook, Instagram, Google, you can give them money so they advance you, or you can get people to be interested genuinely, organically in what you have to say and respond and share, and your reach will grow. So one thing we actually did very good online is to get people to deliberately create organic reach. In the last production, we had a group of about 30 or 40 women and men in every post that we posted in our Facebook page that had about 5 or 6 posts every day. We had a bunch of people, when it came up, they got a WhatsApp message that said this came up, and they got inside and they commented and they shared. By the way, if you want to help cause, the first thing that you need to do on Facebook is to comment and not to share, because comments give them more reach. So that's one thing we use to our advantage. And then the other type of field work was the field work that we did offline, because as you know, online is very important, but at the end of the day, if you want to get media and attention, you're going to have people outside in the street saying this matters. And so other than the very good social media work that we did, we had a lot of people, I call them ambassadors of the cause. We had about 100 women in the last production that each and every one of them felt that this cause is theirs. And whenever they were sitting with friends in a bar, or whenever they were going to a course and met people, every interaction, every social interaction that they had, they spoke about this thing. They said the day 6 months ahead, we would tell people this is going to happen on May 4th. And just we sent people to speak in schools and to speak in youth movements, or to give guides in youth movements, activities to give to their students. So what we did is basically a lot of online and offline work of explaining the cause for a lot of people, and not just one person doing it. And I'm going to get to how you get these a lot of people to join your cause. Another thing that I have, I think we did very successfully, is we had a very good gimmick to get people to get us noticed, to get people to talk about us. But then, as I said, when they come and they say, okay, I've noticed you, now what? You need to have a very good agenda and a very accessible messages that people will understand easily and relate to. And you have to have very good values explaining why this, okay, the gimmick gets their attention, but then you need to have something more substantial to give them. And the other two things that I wanted to mention, that actually when I say gimmick, what I mean is, well, the title of this is provocation a bad thing? So first of all, the downside is, in general, there's a lot of, because when you do something provocative, you say, this is the extreme part of the movement. You can do other things that are not as provocative, but you need a good base of women, in my case, that are willing to take this provocation and not be afraid of the results or the consequences, that people are going to come up to them and say, oh, you're sluts and stuff like that. And so what we did is we took the provocation. As I said, the Slutwalk uniform is women taking off their shirts and walking around the street with bras or without bras, and things written on their body. The words that they're being used to humiliate them a lot of the times are written on their body. And what we did in the first Slutwalk is we created a viral campaign of women taking photographs like that, topless or braless even, with things written on their body, and we let each and every one of them say their personal story. We didn't give them any rules or what they should do and shouldn't do. We told them, you get this post, you say what you want. And a lot of women actually spoke very emotional and very hard stories that they had to share, and it let people relate. I think the two major aspects of social media is that it's based on narcissism and on people being able to identify when you tell them a personal story, if people are able to find themselves within this story. So that's going to motivate them to join and to feel that this is also their cause. And the other thing is that people are heard. If a lot of people are going to go one way, then people looking from the side are going to say, well, I want to be there too because it looks very cool. If thousands of people are attending a Facebook event, then the person who's going to see it is going to go, well, okay, I have to attend this because everybody's doing it. And so we use these two elements to get a lot of viral attention, and that got us media attention and other options to explain and to sell our agenda. And so this campaign actually used the provocation in order to get attention and to get people to relate to the stories. And it also got a lot of people upset, and getting people pissed off at you at social media is usually the best tactic because they react, and when they react, you get exposure. So the first year that we did the Slutwalk, it was before Me Too, and I can say that it was much, much harder for people to understand that if there was an instance that is in the gray area and you're not sure if it's if he attacked her or if she just didn't say, you know, the gray area stuff, which is extremely complicated to explain. And people were much more, it's her fault, she's just blaming him. And I think after Me Too, a lot of people started to understand that it's a lot more complicated. And when women say, when they share a very difficult story, then they should be embraced and not attacked. But the first year, it was a lot of people got upset that we took our bodies and we used them to say what we want to say. And they were like, oh, you're just sluts and blah, blah, blah. And it was an interesting experience. And so that's the provocation and the personal stories combined. And the last thing I want to speak to you, which is the thing that I think that we did with most success, and I think that that's the most important thing in getting people to join your cause. I heard somebody say once that when you join a cause, you come for the cause or you come for the free food, but if you stay because you have good friends or because you feel like you belong. And I think community is the most important thing, whatever cause that you're trying to achieve. What you need to do is to get people to have a sense of community. And a community is basically, when I look at it, I think of a community as an alternative family. We live in an era of social media where you have a lot of different communities and people feel part of communities, but then there is a distance between online communities and the people that are actually willing to go offline for you and fight the fight outside the viral social media. And I think if you think about it as an alternative family, what you need to remember is that you can't pick your family, but your alternative family, you get to pick. And so the community that you surround yourself with, the people that you join hands and fight the fight with, you have to have fun. Because if it's not going to be a fun and a place that they feel like they belong to and that gives them something, then they're not going to stick around because they have other options. So that's something that you need to remember. And I think that it's not only to feel a part of something, it's to feel a part of something bigger. For us, it was to feel a part of the bigger feminist movement. And what we were able to give the women who were volunteering in the production or the women who were coming is a sense that they're a part of something bigger and they're helping to change the reality for sexual violence victims. They're supporting them. They're letting them feel that they're not alone. And so if I have to give you like steps that I think, things that you need to do, I think the base for everything is a good story. This is something that they spoke to us about a lot in Yala, and it's a very, very important thing. You have to have a narrative that people can relate to and they feel that they're part of this story, because people connect to stories. And in our case, for instance, it was that no matter what happened to you and no matter what you did, and if you went up to his house or if you got drunk, if you said no and he didn't listen to the no, then you're not to blame and he is. And this is something that a lot of women were able to relate to and identify with and think that this is something that they want to fight for. And so the first thing that you need to do is actually have a story that people can relate to. It needs to have some sort of personal impact, some sort of personal story, but then it got to be wide enough so people can find themselves within the story. The second thing, as I said, this is an alternative family and it's got to be fun for them and it's got to be fun for you. The people that you want to come and fight the cause and do this on their own free time, you have to know them. You have to be interested in their lives. You have to know who they're dating and where they're living, what they're studying. You have to have real social connections. You have to be interested in them and you have to like them and they have to like you, because otherwise you're not going to want to spend your free time together doing this fighting windmills and trying to change the world, which is the hardest thing that you're going to do. So you need to have some sort of good vibes in it. And so that's the second thing. You have to have real good social connections. The third thing is, I think people need to feel a part of something bigger than them. They need to feel a part of the bigger revolution, of the bigger movement, of something that's happening. And so you need to communicate to them. If you want to tell somebody, oh, come volunteer, stand at this booth, get people to sign for 3 hours, you need to communicate to them all the time how this action is actually part of the bigger movement that your NGO is doing or that your group is doing, and how this is joining together to other NGOs that are doing the same cause as you are. And you just need to make sure that you know and they know how this little thing that you're asking them to do is actually a part of something bigger. And so the third thing is that I think people need evaluation. They need to be assessed. You need to have a sense of success, and you need to be able to celebrate the success with them. You can't just be all the time, oh, this is depressing, women are getting raped. Once in a while, you have to go outside and have a few drinks and say, we did this, this is successful. And also you have to be able to tell them after they've done something, you have to be able to tell them if this is good, if this is bad, what to do next time, because if they don't have any feedback on what they did, then they feel less inclined to do it again. And so I think the fifth thing is that you need to understand that if you're trying to get a cause to be bigger, each person that you bring can bring other people. I get to know 10 people and they're my friends, and each one of them can bring in the other 10 friends that they have, and each one of them will bring another 10, and so you grow each year. And you need to remember that in this, you need to think of this like as a pyramid. On top, you're going to have very few people that are very, very committed to your cause. And on the bottom, you're going to have like 1 million people who are willing to like or comment. And then in the middle, you're going to have all sorts of variations. And you need to remember that you need few very committed people, and then a lot of not, less committed people. And just remember that each person in this pyramid comes with different abilities and with different things that he wants to do. And so you need to adapt what you're asking. If I'm going to ask free for one thing and I'm going to ask you that for another thing, I'm not going to ask everybody to do the same thing all the time. Just remember, these are people, they're different. Each one of them brings something else to the table, and just, you need to know how to play with it. And also another important thing is not to ask group questions, but to ask personal. If you need a challenge, you have to ask somebody personally, because people need to feel like they're being noticed and they're being requested something. And when you send a request in a WhatsApp group for 30, 40 people, a lot of the people are going to ignore it. And if you ring a person up and say, this was very nice of you to come last Thursday, you think you can come next Thursday, there's a lot more probability that they're going to come again. I think to sum it up is, you need to remember that people take part to feel like they belong to something, to feel like they're making an impact, like they're changing the world. Even if it's small bits, you need to let them feel like they're doing something and not just fighting for nothing. And you need to know them, and you need to speak to them personally and assess them and tell them thank you. That's extremely important. Don't forget to tell people thank you and to ask them to come again at the end of this meeting. Tell them the next meeting is next time. And I think I can give you an example from our production. The last 6 months, we had the first crew meeting. And after that, we didn't even have any other work meetings. Every 2 or 3 weeks, we'd meet up and we'd have drinks, we'd have lunch, we'd meet up at somebody's apartment, we'd go dancing, anything that's just letting all the people, all the girls in the production group get to know each other, become friends, because we knew that you can do work online today, but what you can't do online is get to know each other and feel like you're part of something, you're part of family, you're part of a crew that does good things together, and these people, you know them and you know what they like and what they don't like. And so that's one thing that we did that was, I think, very, very successful. And I think that's it.
So I'm going to stay on this side of the screen.
Okay. Freeze chat.
But yeah, if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. I'll also post in the group, and we'll stay here for a few and allow you to ask questions.
Why are you guys writing?
We've been chatting.
I'm just reading the chat. I can say boobs. Can I say boobs?
You can say anything you want.
I get to curse on national TV.
I could also cut it out.
Ah, yes. This is the part where you cut it out already.
I can edit. I'll
It's
edit.
okay.
Okay, so I'll join Bracha.
Yay.
Yay, in front of the screen. Hi, everyone. So thank you for joining us. That was great. Thank you for doing this. It was awesome. I actually got to know Bracha through Yala as a Yala alumni. We got to talking about the Slutwalk. I got super involved, became one of her ambassadors without even knowing, I think. Literally talked to everyone I knew about it for months. Brought my mom
And she
to
thought
the
that
walk.
was her idea.
Brought my mom to the walk.
And your mom was in the newspaper.
And my mom ended up in the newspaper because of it. It was great. So wait, we do have a question.
How do you deal with failure when trying to put together an event? Oh, wow, that's a good one. I'm sure not everything works out smoothly, so how do you keep pushing forward even when nothing seems to work out? First of all, yeah, not everything works out. I think a lot of the time, first of all, I'm a very critical person, and I usually, when an event ends, I'm like, oh, this isn't good, this isn't good enough. I think my girlfriend made fun of me that I went out of the 2,000 or the 5,000? The 2,000. The second walk that we did was 2,000 people, and we finished it, and I was like, oh, this isn't good, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't. It was like looking at me and like, what is wrong with you? So first of all, I think the first rule is not to be too critical with yourself. I think, again, if you have good friends with you in the struggle, and I think what I did is basically I took all my friends and I got them to come with me, and all the other girls that I knew from the movement, I became their friends. So basically, all my friends today are part of some sort of feminist activism that I do. And I think if you have good friends that are with you in it, then you can tolerate everything, even if it means you have a lecture and 5 people show up, or you have a benefit and you don't get all the money that you needed, which is these are things that happen. But you need to remember, first of all, you need to learn from your mistakes. What didn't I do right? And you need to be able to think about this without punishing yourself about it, because it's okay. You're doing activism, and whatever you're doing is better than not doing anything. I think that's the most important thing to remember, is that it's better that you do and don't do it perfectly than you don't do it at all. And also, I think that's one of the things that I learned on feminist discourse, is that people are going to criticize you no matter what you do. And it's going to be very hard to get everybody to think that you're right all the time and everything you're doing is okay. And you can't let that stop you from doing things. I guess just, have good friends, surround yourself with good people that are going to support you and are going to tell you the truth and are going to be just like anything else in life. Not everything works out, but if you don't try, then you're never going to succeed.
Question from Miriam. How do you protect your privacy and secure your online account from possible hackers or violent people?
Well, we've had I think until today, I actually took the first viral campaign that we did. I was photographed in my bra, and that photo, because it was public on Facebook, it got to a lot of forums that I did not want it to be in, and I got a lot of creepy messages and stuff like that. And there were women that got a lot worse because they were, I don't know, fat or gay or stuff like that, and that got a lot more bad attention. So I don't think you have a way of defending yourself from violent people online. And that's, as I said, when you do something provocative, you're going to have to take into account that it's going to have a price, and you're going to have to be able to take it. I do think hackers, I don't know, I'm not good with those things. I think if somebody wanted to hack my account, they would. Still hasn't happened because there's nothing interesting on it, really. But I think that in this world today, you need to remember that people are going to be violent. And what we had is in this viral campaign of a lot of women half naked on social media and speaking about the rape that they have been through or stuff like that, we were supporting each other. If a guy came to the post and started saying, oh, this is your fault and you're doing shaming to this guy that wasn't even mentioned by name or stuff like that, all of us came and started protecting her. So I think in this case, the feminist value of solidarity is a very, very important thing. Again, if you surround yourself with people who agree with you and are willing to support you, then you're not going to feel alone against these people who are acting very violently and saying, this girl is so fat, nobody would want to touch her, she's lying about somebody harassing her. So if she had a lot of women defending her, then I guess the violence would feel less awful.
Yeah, good point. Okay. I'm convinced that once Yalla, always Yalla. So how has Yalla helped you as an activist, and how do you think you can benefit from this huge platform as an activist?
First of all, I met a friend.
Thank you.
Which is a great purchase. Personally, I love activist programs because it gets you to know other activists. And I think what we need, and I told you guys this after Jordan, that it gave me a lot of hope to know that so many people wanted to change the situation, because we live in a very, very bad reality. And it can be very depressing to believe that nothing's ever going to change. But when you sit in a room with 100 other people from all over the Middle East who want to change this, I think for me, it was very, it gave me hope. It gave me, I was willing to stay here and see this through instead of just say, okay, I'm going to go to Australia. I think as activists, first of all, we need to, one of the things that I do is I try to learn from every person that I meet. And I think the benefit of seeing online lectures and being able to do it whenever you like, for me, it was amazing as a program, because it didn't mean I had to go out of the house and go in the rain or in the sun and nothing. I just had to open my computer, and I got to learn a lot from people who I would have never met any other way. So I think that was amazing. And I also met a lot of people, and a lot of, I got to speak about my cause a lot. I got to explain to people why this is important and why this might not be fitting to very traditional societies, but it has its advantages and why it's important as part of the feminist struggle. And I got to meet a lot of people, which I think really that's the most important thing, because when you create connections with people and you create collaborations, then you can grow bigger and stronger and have a bigger impact. And I think that's the most valuable thing that you can have.
Yeah, I also, for example, we have Yalla Tel Aviv, so I also published the Slutwalk there. I'm currently working on translating one of Bracha's articles. It's taking me a while. And we'll publish that on Yalla. So you guys also have that platform in that sense. If you want to publish articles, if you opened a page that you want us to share, we're happy to share what you're doing and how you're doing it with our community, because again, that's the idea of Yalla, creating that network. And that's why Bracha is here today giving you a lecture. What's the alternative way to organize activities in a very conservative society, especially in a sensitive topic?
Oh, well, that's a bit out of my area of specialty, because I really don't do mainstream and conservative. I always say that we have already the mainstream feminist protests we have had for 20 years. In November, November 25th is the International Day Against Violence Against Women. It's got a long name. And it's a day that we've had for 20 years, protest in Tel Aviv that goes against violence against women. And you have Vitzel doing these protests, and you have a lot of people doing these already mainstream and conservative things. And the reason that I think, I was going to say this, but I didn't. Before Me Too, the feminist movement was very boring. The media did not care. It's been around for a while. Nothing's new. The media always wants something new. Social media didn't care, because social media is a bit of an echo bubble, that you speak to the people who agree with you, but the people who don't agree with you rarely get exposed to what you think. And I think what we were able to do is to come and draw this attention again. I think you can see it today in Gaza, that you have the girls with the videos, taking pictures and taking movies of the young Palestinian girls who are filming the army and the confrontations with them. And it's a very provocative thing, but it gets attention to something that people might not want to look at. And I think that's why provocation is, a lot of times, it's very good. I think if you want to do something that's mainstream, because you live in a culture that doesn't enable you to do something else, what you need to do is you need to find within these limits how you can draw people's attention. You need to find a way how they can relate to personal stories, how you can tell them this is something new. And this is hard. You have people in advertising working on this every day and getting paid a lot of money. It's very hard to think of new ways to get people's attention. So I agree that provocation is a shortcut. You know, it gave me an easier way to get people to listen. But I got the chance to sit in national TV and say, it doesn't matter what you did, you're not to blame for being hurt. So that was something that I was willing to take all the risks that I took. And I said, this is worth it. I think if you're trying to do it conservative, it's going to be a lot harder, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's hard to get people's attention.
There are also different levels of provocation. What's slightly provocative here will be very provocative in a lot of the rest of them, at least, and where a lot of
But I think you had in Iran, you had the women dancing in the streets.
Exactly. So
filming themselves and dancing.
But they weren't naked. They were just dancing. So I think provocation you can do something that's a little bit provocative. And I'm not encouraging anyone to do anything that will put them in risk here.
Yeah.
But you can do something that's a little bit provocative, but still within the limits. It's all about kind of pushing the limits of the envelope, I think.
And I think
we live in a slightly more less conservative community that allows a lot more, so we could do that. But if you do something a little less, again, women in Iran dancing in the street, still with a hijab on, that was still provocative.
Yeah.
Women driving was still provocative in Saudi Arabia until recently. So,
and I think if you think about, like I said, my goal is to be pride. I think if you look at pride in Israel, 20 years ago, people were saying, oh, this is provocative. Why are the gay dancing in the street? So I think you need to remember that when you're pushing the limits, if you look back, somebody pushed the limits a bit for you. And so you need to find the way that you can push the boundaries just a bit more without taking a risk for your life or something, but just pushing it a little bit more. And in a decade or two, people are going to look back and say, because she pushed the limit just a bit more, we're allowed to do this.
Okay. Non-traditional activism, such as online activism, is changing the political scene in our region. Do you think that presence of women online could replace their presence in the field?
No. I think one of the problems with the feminist movements was that women were busy, and still are busy, raising kids, and now they're raising kids and having careers. And that's one of the reasons that the feminist movement is having a hard time progressing. If you look at the African-American struggle or the LGBT struggle, you see different progress and faster progress. And I think it's part of the reason is that women, they don't have the time to protest anything because they have too much responsibility in the house. I think online activism is extremely important, and it gives you a chance. I know a lot of feminist activists that would never be in a protest because they're PTSD, because they're social anxiety, because of different reasons, but they can use the online activism to do things that they weren't able to speak to tens of people about this cause if you go back a decade or two ago. But I still think that the main challenge that you have, if you can do, and you started thinking the Arab Spring, online activism is important, but at the end of the day, if you want to change society, if you want to get the leaders to pay attention, the media to pay attention, you're going to have people walk outside their house and say, this is important to me. And I hope that the online activism can get to a lot of people, and then out of those people, a lot more can come outside of their house. It's more than what it used to be. That's, it's trending, I think.
Good. Okay. Maria, how did the Me Too campaign affect your work? And how do you measure the impact of your grassroots work on a large scale?
Okay, first of all, I don't measure. I say numbers. I'm kidding. The newspaper says how many people were in the Slutwalk, and that's how I measure it. Actually, this year we're going to have a lot of problems because we're stuck between the Pride in June and the Eurovision that's going to happen in Tel Aviv in May. So we're totally screwed this year. But you measure it by the media giving numbers in the paper and saying this and these people came outside. But I think Me Too, was a very good, it was amazing because it got a lot of people to understand that we're not just saying, before Me Too, we had in Israel a saying of one, because each and every woman would have been harassed in her life, harassed or attacked or sexually harassed or stuff like that. Each and every woman had one of those instances in her life. And Me Too was a viral trend that got people to understand that each and every woman that they meet have had something happen to her. If it's somebody speak to her on the street or somebody touch her ass at a party, or a lot worse things. And I think the impact that viral campaign had was amazing for the feminist movement. I could feel in our work that if the first year was very hard to get people to understand the gray areas and to understand that even ugly and fat women could get raped, and it was like, no, you're ugly, nobody would have raped you, you're lying. And after Me Too, those comments were gone because people knew, first of all, they knew it's not socially accepted to say these things again. So we upped the level in how people understand they have to be nice to women who were victimized and not blame them and not attack them and not say they're lying. And we still have a very long way to go, but I think it's changed a little bit. And it also hurt us because after Me Too, we needed to get the media's attention again, and just saying that, telling them 50 stories about women getting arrested wasn't as interesting. So we needed to find new ways to get our stories. And with the measuring of impact, we do a lot of things that's not the Slutwalk itself. We have previous events. We had a benefit, and we had lectures, and we had all women's stand-up night. We had a lot of events, and in each event, you can count the people who are coming. Social media is a very good way to see numbers of exposure, but as you all know, it's got algorithms and stuff, and Facebook doesn't like it when you don't pay. And so a lot of the time, the reach there isn't very, very measurable to what you're actually doing. But if I can say that the first year we had 5 mainstream media interviews, and then the second year we had 10, and then the third year we had dozens of them, and also an international, like I think there were 20 countries around the world who reported 5,000 naked feminists walked in Tel Aviv. And so I had a friend from Australia who PM'd me, and he was like, I don't usually go to alt-right forums on the internet, but I saw your name. And I was like, what? And they were all quoting, they were copying and pasting from the Russian site who was reporting, because, I don't know, a lot of reporters from Russia here or something. But I think you can measure the amount of items that you have. You can measure people who are coming. You can measure money that you're getting inside, because the Slutwalk we're not funded. There's nobody. We sell shirts and we sell magnets and bags. And so you can say we sold more last year, so more people supported us. More?
Okay, yeah, a few more.
No, it's okay.
I read about your activism in the protests in Tel Aviv Slutwalk. I would like to ask Bracha, what was the internal spark that motivated you to start this campaign? How do you deal with the abusive comments?
Well,
we touched on some of it.
Yeah, I did. The abusive comments are just like you. I just got used to it by now, and I see it. Sometimes I get upset. I don't get upset at abusive comments. I do get upset at personal stories. Once in a while, I get a message from a woman who tells me, look, this and this happened to me. And they don't warn you. They just send like a very sad story, and like you're reading it and like, oh my God, what just happened to me? And that's something that's a lot harder to deal with, I think, than the abusive comments, because I just say these guys hate us and this is good for my traffic, and I'm just gonna ignore it and let him bring me people to the site. But I have to say that if you get exposed to difficult stories, then you need to have your support system, your psychiatrist, your psychologist. We have Merkazei Siwa. How do you say this? Support lines. Yeah, so you need to have somebody that you're getting support from. What was my personal spark? I don't have a personal spark, per se. I think I started doing feminist activism when I was in uni because I wanted feminist friends. I wanted to find a feminist on campus. And as time moved on, I realized that I can say things that other women can't. And I'm willing to sit in national TV and speak about these very hard issues. And I can give voice to women who have been sexually assaulted and are now not able to speak up for themselves because they don't want people to know that it's them, or because they're emotionally unable to do it. And so I think that I felt that I can do this for women who can't speak, and that's what keeps me going. How can you make a conservative society involved in a campaign? You are in the process of organizing after losing your reputation as an NGO or something like that. Well, I didn't have a reputation, so that's okay. I'm the slut. I've been using the word slut so much for the past 3 years that when I say, oh, I run an NGO called Kulan, the second thing that I say is we produce the Slutwalk. And I think one of our successes is that if 3 years ago people say, oh my God, sluts, now a lot of people, especially inside the feminist field, understand that this is, we're doing reclaiming, and if I call myself a slut, that you cannot insult me with this word. So I think we got that message across, and now I don't have to protect my reputation because it's obvious that I'm not speaking of actually anything that I'm doing or not doing, not that it's bad, but I'm not speaking about my habits. I'm speaking about the concept of people calling women sluts because they want to justify the fact that they hurt them. I think getting more conservative people involved is not easy when you're doing something so provocative. I can say that as the years grow by and as it spreads more, a lot of conservative people say, I agree with the cause, but I can't join this. And so we say, that's okay. There's other things that we do that are more conservative. In this part of the year that we finish the Slutwalk and we start producing a calendar that has women portraying other women in history. And so it's a very, very educational and beautiful product, and everybody's dressed. So I'm just saying, if you wanna, yeah, there's one over there. If you want, oh, that was such a fool. See what you did.
And it didn't break.
That's good.
I'll leave you alone to answer
I'm terrorizing the food house. So this is the calendar that we're doing, and it's got, this is like a woman from Femin, and this is somebody who's being Bjork, and this is somebody who's being Princess Diana, and this is Frida Kahlo, and you go on, and there's a lot of women who are fully dressed, and you can support the cause of women and the feminist movement without taking your clothes off or joining something that's not to your liking. And I always say to people, you don't have to come to the Slutwalk. That's okay. We'll do the provocative part. But if you think that the cause is a good cause, then find the way that you can join the movement and do whatever you think is right. And I always say, I will support any feminist activity that is done in Israel and in the world, because I think that we need to support each other. And I don't ask my conservative friends to join the Slutwalk, but I do ask them to support it in any way that they can, even if it means not telling us, oh, you're ruining. I've had feminist women telling me, you're ruining the feminist movement, because in their line of work, this is unacceptable, and they don't know how to explain to women that this is something that has a place in the feminist movement. And so I think I'm not asking you to do what I'm doing. I'm not asking everybody to join. I do think that in 10 years, when the Tel Aviv Slutwalk will be like Pride Tel Aviv, then a lot of people will join, because most people have fun in these kind of things, and it's okay that it's provocative. If a lot of people are doing it, then it's going to be much more acceptable. But just, I think you don't have to do the things that you don't feel comfortable in, but just don't ruin it for other feminists. And I see a lot of feminists who do things that I don't agree with, and if I think I have to criticize them, then I walk up to them and I tell them, I think this is a problem, but I'm not going to go publicly, oh, this line of activism is not something that you need to appreciate. No, how can I know? How do you deal with topics that people usually try not to be so like very sensitive?
Read them out loud so people know what you asked.
I think I'm not sure if I know how to answer this. How do you deal with topics that people usually try not to be associated with, like very sensitive topics? It's very.
I think you try to talk about it more sensitively. Yeah, at the end of the day, you use different language.
You try to make it more accessible. You try to get people to understand why this is important. I think in a lot of societies, and even in the secular society in Tel Aviv, most people don't like to hear about rape and about women being sexually assaulted all the time. They don't want to hear that women are afraid when they walk in the street in the dark because, oh, this is Tel Aviv, everything's okay. People have a hard time understanding these things. And I think you need to find a way to speak about these sensitive subjects. There are places that I go that I tone down the provocation in order to explain why this is important. And there are places that I up the provocation. So I think you need to know who you're speaking to and remember what your goal is. And I think you see it a lot in the conversations that we have in feminist discourse, that there's 10 admins, and a lot of the times we don't agree with a lot of the things that members of the group are saying, but we keep in mind that we want them to stay and we want them to listen. And so if they don't listen today, maybe they'll listen tomorrow or the next day or the next day, or maybe in a month, something will happen that will get them to listen. And so I think you need to be patient, and you need to be sensitive, and you need to be very, very critical of yourself all the time and try to adapt what you're saying to the people that you're talking to. And I think be brave. And if people don't want to speak about the hard reality, they want to, ignore things and pretend like everything's fine. But that's not how you change the world. You need to remind them that things are not good and what they can do in order to change it. What else? As an activist, I find at times it difficult to convince people from the mass with ideas that may not align with their religious and conservative background. How can I reach the masses in a way
that can
that can engage them and not make them respond in a passive-aggressive way or totally not hear the message? I think it's not just religions. I think every conservative way of life, when we call ourselves radical feminists, it means that we're taking society as it is and we're trying to change it. We're trying to turn it upside down altogether. And conservatives of any type are usually people who are trying to keep things as they are. And so it's going to be a hard sell. It's going to take a while to get there. But I think, first of all, you need to get people to relate. You need to tell them a story that they can relate to. And if I can speak to religious feminists in Israel and have them connect to the feeling that they're being blamed for something that they didn't do, and they're not to blame for that, and they can relate to this story that I'm saying, that I'm telling them, that's a way. You need to find the small ways how to get inside and to get people to be your ambassadors, even if they're in a different society. I think one of the most amazing thing in Israel is that you have the Jewish religious feminist movement, which is progressing amazingly, and they're turning everything upside down, and they're actually going to rabbis and traditions that have been around for centuries and saying, this isn't right for us, we want something else. And so I think you need to find the people that you can work with in every society, and it's never easy to get to the masses. It's never easy. Most people, when they run into something that's against what the core belief, they're gonna immediately take their shields up and not listen to you and attack you and say that everything you're saying is not valid. And so I think you need to find a way to speak to them without raising these shields and getting them to relate to what you're saying, getting them to see that the cause that you're trying to get them to join is something that involves their lives, even if it looks like it's something completely different from what you're going through. But at the end of the day, they can have something similar, and you need them on your side. And it's going to be hard work. Anything else?
Omaima had a question about bringing people from behind the scenes to action, but I think you addressed that in your lecture, so I just asked if she got to catch that part, or if she wanted to know more. And Maria asked, what do you do when you get exhausted?
I go party.
Yeah, I take her partying.
Yeah, I go party. I go dancing. I love the beach and I love dancing, and I don't do it enough. But it's usually when I have a very hard week at the end of the week, I go party because that's my energizer. I think, how is the transition from online to offline? I think, first of all, it's always funny to meet people that you met online, to meet them in real life. And you're never sure how the chemistry is going to be. And you need to be sociable to people that you've never met, but you feel like you've met them. So it's always a bit awkward at first, but on the second time, it's like we're already friends. And I think, as I said, your goal is to get a lot of people online with you, and then some percentage of that you're going to be able to get outside the house for one day a year. Not every day, not every week, not every month. But if you go for one day a year, one day, I don't know, every few months, then you need to, it's a numbers game. You need to get a lot of people to be with you online so you can have a nice percentage of that to come outside. Anything else?
Any more questions? I think we're done.
Thanks, guys.